Here are 3 big mistakes that you need to avoid during your next gaining phase. So I've done plenty of gaining phases in my time. I've done a pretty tidy one and I've done a really messy one. And I'm back to doing a very, very tidy one this time. So I would say I did, your typical kind of gaining phase where you're tracking your calories, but you might be a little bit loose with things. And then I had one where I was kind of tracking my calories, but it was very loose with things. And that was the one where I learned the most amount of lessons, and I learned the hard way. Let's put it like that. I went from 93 kilos, not pretty lean, but not overly fat, to 100 kilos fat. And being a powerlifter, you can kind of get away with it, but I wasn't happy with how my physique was looking, so I had to do a diet to lose a lot of that fat. I had a pretty aggressive diet, and I had to put myself through more hardship than is needed. So mistake number 1 that you should avoid: do not let things slip through the cracks. And what I mean by that is food. So track everything. When I was in my second gaining phase, I stopped tracking butters, I stopped tracking sauces, I stopped tracking some liquids. I even stopped tracking some of my foods on the weekends. And a lot of the little snacks that I was sneaking in throughout the day were starting to add up. And you can only get away with that so much until it just really starts packing on the calories and packing on the body fat, because butters, sauces, snacks, having pizza and going out on the weekends and eating what food you like, it's all just going to be a recipe for disaster. And if you want to do a gaining phase properly, you should do it lean, and you should take your time at it and make sure that you track everything that you eat, even if you do go over on your calories. And that, I think, is the key part, because I was avoiding taking responsibility for the amount of food that I was eating because I wasn't tracking it. And it just kind of snowballed into a situation where I ended up gaining way too much body fat too quickly. And if you're in a gaining phase, the only way to lose that body fat is going into a diet. And I didn't want to do that because I was going to compete in the sub 103s in powerlifting. And if you want to compete, you're going to have to be close to 100 kilos at least. So that was mistake number 1 that I learned from. And I advise you not to make that same mistake. That's one of the biggest ones. Number 2, being a lazy piece of shit. I have a very low step count. I'm a coach, I'm an online coach, and I'm an in-person coach. I don't get a lot of steps. I spend 80% of my day in the gym. Some of my steps, and I'm actually embarrassed to admit it, used to be close to only 2,000 steps per day. And that was when I was peak gaining. And just by increasing your activity level, you can increase your energy expenditure, which will reduce how much body fat that you could potentially gain, and will leave you a little bit more wiggle room throughout your gaining phase. And if you do have a day where it's off plan, at least you can say, okay, well, I've hit my step target, 10,000 steps, or I've done my 2 cardio sessions per week, and it's leaving me space to have a little bit more calories on days where I'm not tracking my food. But the mistake is not doing that. It's actually just being a lazy ass bitch and just having, I just want to train, I just want to lift heavy, and I just want to build muscle, and conserve my calories for recovery. And it's not going to get you anywhere, because your body can only partition so much calories into muscle mass, and it's not going to happen all that quickly, nor is it going to happen at the rate that you think it is. Like, I'm pretty sure it's 600 to 800 calories in a single pound of muscle. So if you're having a 250 calorie surplus every day, and you're hoping that you go over on that calorie surplus, that it's all going to be going towards building muscle mass, it's very unlikely. And it takes a long time to build muscle mass. Most likely your body is going to partition those excess calories into body fat, and it's just going to naturally want to do that. So having more activity outside of the gym, we could guess that the partitioning of the energy that you're consuming will more likely go towards producing energy so that you can maintain your energy level for the extra activity that you're doing, plus your training, and conserve some of that energy as carbohydrates, and then use some of that energy to contribute to muscle gain. And then whatever portion is left out of that is going to be accumulated as fat gain. There's no way of avoiding that. That just happens with a gaining phase. And that is why I would say to do your cardio and to make sure to hit your step count during a gaining phase. Okay, number 3, keep the nutrition quality high. Now this is difficult if you are someone that is on a very high calorie intake. I'm quite fortunate. I'm only on a 2,600 calorie surplus, 2,800 calorie surplus. So I don't have a whole lot of food to eat, and it is quite easy getting those foods through good healthy foods, or nutritionally dense foods, as I should put it. Having some processed foods is okay, but if you're someone that has to hit 3,500 calories a day because you're very active, like my client Jamie, having some processed foods is probably going to be okay. But if you are someone like myself where you have, let's say, not all that good eating habits, or your eating habits could falter into not going to be very performance benefiting or going to, i.e. make you fat, I would just try and keep it as clean as possible. Some tips for you on how to get some high calorie dense foods that are more nutrient dense. So avocados, nuts, seeds, peanut butters, almond butter, whole milk, bananas are pretty calorie dense, red meats and fatty fish. Using oils as well, like olive oil, things like that they will accumulate more calories, coconut oil. They're just easy ways of actually accumulating more calories within your meal, but they're more nutrient dense than having other palatable foods like junk food that are going to be, yes, high in calories, but very low in nutrients, and that aren't really going to benefit you in terms of producing healthy habits when you have to eventually go into a diet. Because, you know, if you're having a really high processed food intake during the gaining phase, trying to swap that to like being a nutrient dense high fiber intake when you're going into a diet is going to be difficult. So trying to keep the nutrient quality high, and then putting in higher calorie foods where you can, and then having some processed foods along the way, because you're going to be able to have that, but just not making it 80% of your intake. Trying to make it at 10 to 20% of your intake on the daily or across the week. So they're the 3 mistakes that I used to make and I've learned from, and I hope you take this on board, because you can really avoid turning a really decent bulk into a really dirty bulk. And I suppose the key to this is that a gaining phase should be long. It should be 6 months plus. And the longer you're in a gaining phase, the leaner that you can stay, the more muscle gain that you're going to accrue, the more strength gains you're going to accrue. And keeping your gaining phase lean and tidy is going to allow you to actually be in that gaining phase for longer. Now, what I do with most of my clients when starting off, I start them off in a dieting phase. And unless they're very, very lean starting off with low muscle mass, most people will start in a dieting phase. And the reason being is because a dieting phase will teach you how to have the habits that you need during a gaining phase. So nutrient quality, increasing your energy output, so steps, extra cardio, tracking and weighing your food, being consistent with those things, being tight with all those things. And those habits will accumulate during, possibly an 8, 12, 16 week diet. And then you can carry those habits over into a gaining phase. And it just makes the process much easier, because you've learned how to do it already during a time where you don't really want to do it. Now it's a time where you want to do it. So let's put all that energy into those habits even more and really solidify them, because they're going to allow you to eat more food, make more progress, get bigger, get stronger, and look better. So this is how I do it with my clients. This is how I do it myself. As you can see, between my last diet and my current pictures now from my 2 weeks within the gaining phase, and it seems to work out great, and it's a process that I follow. So hopefully that's helped. If it has, make sure to give this video a like, comment down below and ask me whatever questions you like, and of course, be sure to subscribe.